the Foreign Office and is the new Deputy Prime Minister. Yvette Cooper takes over from him as Foreign Secretary, and taking her place at the Home Office is Shabana Mahmood, who is leaving justice behind and is now the Home Secretary. All change here in Downing Street tonight.
It really is. This could have been much smaller. It could have been merely the replacement of one minister with someone coming in to replace her. Instead, it is much, much bigger, a recasting of this government.
We'll have full analysis from Chris. Also tonight, 3 British nationals are now known to have died in the funicular crash in Portugal on Wednesday. Tributes to the Duchess of Kent, who has died at the age of 92. The Prince and Princess of Wales say she worked tirelessly to help others. And the unfinished David Bowie musical, written on post-it notes that were found in his flat after his death. Good evening from Downing Street. A major cabinet reshuffle has taken place here this afternoon after the resignation of Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister. She stepped down this lunchtime after a report by Sir Keir Starmer's ethics advisor said she had breached the ministerial code by not paying enough stamp duty on a flat she bought in May in Hove in Sussex. It is a major headache for the Prime Minister, who is tonight here in Downing Street overseeing a lot of changes to his top team. Our political editor, Chris Mason, has been following it all, and the scale of the changes really, I mean, it's extensive, isn't it?
It really is. I got a sense of this at lunchtime when I spoke to someone senior in government. They said this is going to be a wide-ranging reshuffle, but the Chancellor of the Exchequer will be staying in place. Now, they were doing that to ensure the markets remain calm and there wasn't speculation about her potential movement, but it spoke to the breadth of what we were to get, drip by drip, throughout the afternoon. The final piece, certainly in terms of the picture, completed in the last few minutes. We just saw Yvette Cooper, the new Foreign Secretary, arriving here in Downing Street just a few minutes ago. And a decision taken by Downing Street, Sophie, that they were going to grip what has been, quite frankly for them, a horrible couple of days. The personal foul-up and foibles of the now former Deputy Prime Minister, confronting Keir Starmer with something of a crisis. As I say, he could have simply found a replacement for her as Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, instead deciding that he would recast his government in a far bigger way. I think he is recognising a shaky first year and also recognising that unless you go big with a reshuffle, perhaps firstly people don't notice, and secondly it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So let me talk you through what has happened today. As I say, an emphasis on the personal, a very, very difficult day for Angela Rayner, and a big character in this postcode, and some big news for people arriving in new government jobs too. A little over a year ago, Yvette Cooper walked up Downing Street to become Home Secretary. Now she is Foreign Secretary. Doing that same walk in summer 2024, Shabana Mahmood. Then to become Justice Secretary, she's now the Home Secretary. And David Lammy has been Foreign Secretary.
Have you been demoted, David Lammy?
He's now the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary. And all this a headline-grabbing shake-up prompted by the personal foul-up of Angela Rayner. From hard hats to hugs, from party conference to the cabinet table. For 5 years, Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have been the double act at the top of the Labour Party and, over the last year and a bit, at the top of government. Today marks the end of this partnership and the end of a saga where her departure looked increasingly inevitable. Commentary like this about a Deputy Prime Minister felt politically unsurvivable. This was a tale of two homes, a new flat here in Hove in East Sussex, and her home in Ashton-under-Lyne. She no longer owned the house here in Greater Manchester, having sold her stake after a divorce to a trust set up for her disabled child. She was advised that meant she could pay the normal rate of stamp duty on her new place on the south coast. But, as she acknowledged the other day, she later realised she ought to have paid the higher rate charged to those with more than one home.
As soon as I knew that that was the case, I have alerted and referred myself to the independent advisor on the ministerial code to ensure that they can look transparently at what's happened.
Today, Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor, said Angela Rayner has acted with integrity, but she believed that she relied on the legal advice she had received, but unfortunately did not heed the caution contained within it, which acknowledged that it did not constitute expert tax advice and which suggested that expert advice be sought. And so, it is with deep regret that I must advise that in these circumstances I consider the code to have been breached. This prompted Angela Rayner's resignation. In a letter to Keir Starmer, she said, "I deeply regret my decision to not seek additional specialist tax advice. I take full responsibility for this error. It was never my intention to do anything other than pay the right amount." She also reflected, "The challenges of government are nothing compared to the challenge of putting food on the table and getting a roof over our head when I brought up kids working as a home help." The Prime Minister said she'd made the right decision to resign, adding, "I have nothing but admiration for you and huge respect for your achievement in politics." Angela Rayner was born in Stockport in 1980, grew up in one of its poorest areas and as a child cared for her mum who had depression and bipolar disorder. She would later decide she wanted to be an MP.
I grew up on a council estate, parents on benefits, became a single mother aged 17. It makes me so angry when coalition MP after coalition MP talks down people like me. They should be standing up for people like my family, not rubbishing our aspirations.
She worked for a trade union and arrived in Parliament in 2015. A big character, she quickly made an impression.
I will always tell it how it is. My constituents deserve no less, and I'll do it in my own little northern way.
A self-described mouthy MP, she once called the Conservatives a bunch of scum. She later apologised.
Are the Tories scum?
I think that Boris Johnson is a racist, misogynist and homophobic guy, and he needs to apologise for his comments he's made in the past.
Angela Rayner's resignation, a huge personal moment for her, heralding an equally big moment for Sir Keir Starmer's government. Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
Well, Angela Rayner was first elected to Parliament in 2015 as Labour MP for Ashton-under-Lyne near Manchester. It's also where the family home is, the house which has been put into trust for her disabled son. Our correspondent Judith Moritz has been hearing reaction from Angela Rayner's constituency.
It was bin day today in Ashton-under-Lyne. Angela Rayner wasn't home, but as the rubbish lorry reached her place this morning, she was still Housing Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. By the time the bin men finished their round, though, she'd resigned. Angela Rayner's been the MP here for a decade, and her office is in the Market Hall. Some shoppers were showing their loyalty today.
I don't think it's fair. I'm a Labour girl anyway, so, I think she's only human, isn't she? We all make mistakes, but she's being penalised for it.
But we spoke to lots of people here, and in general, the lack of support was striking. On the meat counter, butcher Andy Hall was trimming the fat and is of the view that his MP should have been as careful with her financial arrangements.
If she can't run her own affairs, how's she going to run the country? She's Deputy Prime Minister, isn't she? So, you think really she had to go, definitely.
She comes in here sometimes.
She comes past, yeah.
Has there been any sympathy towards the situation she's...
I don't think there is, no. There's no sympathy at all, no. No, I think buying that house in Brighton's not gone down well in Ashton either.
Sausage dog Reggie has no views, but Chris and Val out walking him were firm in their disdain for Angela Rayner and don't just want her to step down from her government positions.
I think she ought to resign her position as a Member of Parliament. She still has influence and power within this constituency, and I don't think that's right.
At the balloon shop, they were telling jokes about politicians being full of hot air too. Julie's run the shop for 30 years and feels Angela Rayner hasn't been genuine.
I won an award and I got a letter off her from the Houses of Parliament. So I got the letter, saying, "Congratulations, Julie." She doesn't know me. She doesn't know my shop.
From the top table to the back benches, Angela Rayner remains MP for this town. Her constituents may be seeing more of her, but that doesn't mean they'll give her an easy time. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Ashton-under-Lyne.
Well, let's talk more about this to our political editor, Chris Mason. We just saw the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, leaving a short time ago. We've mentioned the three big names in the reshuffle today, but there are many others.
There really are. So just to run through a few, a new Housing Secretary replacing Angela Rayner, Steve Reed. Work and Pension Secretary, Pat McFadden. New Business Secretary, Peter Kyle. New Science Secretary, Liz Kendall. New Secretary of State for Scotland, Douglas Alexander. New Environment Secretary, Emma Reynolds. Worth mentioning that there are a few big jobs, quite a few actually, where the existing Secretaries of State are staying put, so in health and in education and defence and in energy.
And but the Chancellor, of course.
And indeed the Chancellor, as was made clear at the outset. But make no mistake, this is big. They don't really get much bigger than this as government reshuffles. And the Prime Minister clearly concluding that he might as well just go big, that he'd had this really, really difficult week, principally as a result of what Angela Rayner had done, for which she has now accounted and has lost her job. And so what do? Do you just react to that by filling the gap, or do you try and do something that, as I say, is not only noticed because it generates news headlines, but has the capacity to reshape and remould the government? Because, I'm conscious when I'm reading this list out. For our viewer at home, you might perfectly reasonably say, OK, this is the ambitions of a bunch of folk who I'm vaguely aware of. Why does it matter to me? It only matters, it only works from Keir Starmer's perspective if it's noticeable to our viewer on the sofa, because otherwise it is just the actions within this postcode. And from the Prime Minister's perspective, increasingly, Sophie, he is well aware that there's a coming political battle that's happening right now between Labour and Nigel Farage and Reform. What can Labour do with their popularity shrivelling just over a year into office to take on, in a difficult time economically and with the small boats and plenty of else besides, a leader in Nigel Farage who can grab attention, who can generate headlines and is proving popular? And this reshuffle should be seen in that context.
But what about for the Prime Minister himself in a week which began with a reset? How damaging is it for him?
It's been a difficult week, there's no doubt. I mean, he gave that interview to Matt Chorley on 5 Live on Monday and was talking about phase 2 of his government and this idea that it's all about delivery. And then he was waiting for the delivery of his independent advisors. Excuse me, I swallowed a fly. His independent advisors' verdict on his Deputy Prime Minister is exactly the opposite of what he would have wanted. Instead, I think they've decided, let's take that moment. There'd been talk of a reshuffle for a while, it had been in the offing for a while. Let's speed it forward and do it now, in the hope that they're seen to be seizing the agenda. There's the guy with the most job security.
I was going to say,
some things
Larry
really
the cat
change.
has reappeared on the steps of Downing Street. Chris Mason, our political editor, thank you very much. Well, as Chris was saying, while all this has been going on in Downing Street, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has been telling his party's annual conference in Birmingham that Reform is the party on the rise and that the next general election could be as early as 2027. From Birmingham, here's Joe Pike.
Victory at the local elections gave Reform a peak at power. This growing fan base hopes much more is possible. And the boss believes he's assembling an enviable team.
Is your party more than a one-man band, Mr Farage?
Have a look. Have a look.
His latest teammate, former Tory Cabinet Minister Nadine Dorries, who Mr Farage has been rather rude about in the past.
What changed your mind on Nadine Dorries, Mr Farage?
No, I think Nadine Dorries has changed her mind and she's realised that the Conservative Party is dead. As she said, it's dead. It's had it.
He's also attempting to capitalise on Labour's problems. Angela Rayner's resignation meant Farage's fireworks were detonated 3 hours earlier than planned.
The reason that I've moved this speaking time forward is because this government is deep in crisis. We are the patriotic party. We are the party that stands up for decent working people, and we are the party on the rise.
Today he announced a new department to help Reform get ready for the possibility of government, and he argued that splits on the left mean that could come far sooner than expected.
I think there is every chance now of a general election happening in 2027, and we must be ready.
Nigel Farage pledged serious cuts to the benefits bill, and he made this promise.
We will stop the boats within 2 weeks of winning government.
He didn't say how that'll be achieved, but his party's immigration policies seem popular amongst members and a lot of voters too.
Reform's sustained lead in the opinion polls is remarkable, but maintaining it for years could be difficult. It's perhaps why today Nigel Farage spoke so much about preparedness and unity.
I'm blown away by Nigel's speech. I think it's what Britain's crying out for.
Your critics argue the numbers don't add up.
That's absolutely nonsense. Look at this current government. They don't know whether they're talking about a 20 billion black hole or a 30 billion black hole.
And what do you want to cut?
We've got to cut, for example, all the waste, the unnecessary waste. We've got to get people back to work. Well, for example, the welfare budget.
This conference may have been overshadowed by events at Westminster, but Reform remain bullish about their chances in the years ahead.
Nigel Farage specifically highlighted the opportunity, as he sees it, of next May's elections to both the Welsh Senedd and Scottish Parliament. There seems to be a hope here in Birmingham that Reform have time on their side, both to set out more policy and to build up their campaigning operation. There, though, can be a bit of a danger in time in politics, as the next general election is in 2 years' time, as Nigel Farage predicted today, or 4 years, as is more likely. Well, a lot could happen between now and then, including changes in the opinion polls. And of course, Sophie, as the events of Westminster today, I think, can prove 24 hours is a pretty long time in politics, let alone 2 or 4 years.
Indeed. Joe Pike, thank you. And just to say, Laura Koonsberg will be getting all the latest reaction to the reshuffle this Sunday on BBC1. And she will also be interviewing Nigel Farage. That's 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. The rest of the news now, and it is now known that 3 British nationals are among 16 people who died in the funicular railway crash in Lisbon on Wednesday. More than 20 others have been injured, some seriously, after the funicular, a popular tourist attraction, derailed and crashed at high speed into a building. Jessica Parker has sent the latest from Lisbon.
In grief, the search for comfort, as people poured out of a service for 4 Portuguese victims, workers at this charity and colleagues of these women.
I
saw them every day, she tells me. It's very hard. When we were in the church, the sound of the trams outside disturbed me, she says. I had to leave. Overnight, these famous funicular carriages were hauled out of sight. But the horror of Wednesday's crash is still fresh and raw. It also claimed the lives of 3 unidentified British nationals, 2 men aged 82 and 44, and a 36-year-old woman, according to local police. A preliminary investigation report won't be released for up to 6 weeks, but questions in Portugal are already being asked about the adequacy of inspections and maintenance, especially as the city's funiculars have become more and more popular amidst Lisbon's tourism boom. The city's public transport operator have said they followed all maintenance protocols. This city councillor says he also knew one of the victims. People are obviously extremely distressed, but also angry.
I am angry. I am angry. I was already, and when I understood that, I knew the people involved, the rage is overwhelming, yes.
This is how the funicular works in normal times. Attached by a cable, as one car goes down, its weight lifts the other up. But the crash tore up this iconic street. Now, piece by piece, people want the cause uncovered. Jessica Parker, BBC News in Lisbon.
President Putin has warned that any Western troops deployed to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire would be legitimate targets for attack. The Russian president made the comments at an economic forum in Vladivostok, close to the Chinese and North Korean borders. It comes after 26 nations from the so-called Coalition of the Willing promised to guarantee Ukraine's post-war security. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, reports from Vladivostok.
He was here to talk about the economy in Russia's Far East. But Vladimir Putin had a message for the West. don't send your soldiers to Ukraine.
If some troops appear there, especially now while the fighting's continuing, we proceed from the premise that these will be legitimate targets for destruction.
Only yesterday, European leaders pledged post-war security guarantees for Ukraine, including an international reassurance force on land, sea and in the air. The Kremlin is fiercely opposed.
We consider it a danger for us, presence of international forces or any foreign forces or NATO country forces on the soil of Ukraine next to our borders. So in our understanding, it will not help us get closer to the solution of the Ukrainian conflict.
But why doesn't Ukraine have the right, as far as Russia is concerned, to invite whoever it wants, whichever soldiers it wants onto its territory? I mean, Russia is inviting North Korean troops.
Then it's a danger for us. It's a real danger for us because we are an enemy of NATO.
North Korean troops are a danger to Ukraine.
Written in NATO's documents. So we cannot afford that. And we'll do whatever is necessary to ensure our security.
And anyway, who needs peacekeepers if there's no war, says the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin made this argument. If there's a peace deal on Ukraine, then there'll be no need for foreign peacekeepers in Ukraine because Russia will stick to the agreement. In other words, you can trust the Kremlin. That's a big ask for Ukraine, and Western leaders are likely to be sceptical too. And suspicious of President Putin's offer. He says he's ready to meet President Zelensky, but in Moscow. It's the best place for it, he says. The home crowd was loving it. But the bigger picture? There is no sign of peace, with the Kremlin leader in no mood to compromise. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Vladivostok.
The actor John Alford has been found guilty of sexually assaulting 2 teenage girls. The former Grange Hill and London's Burning Star had denied sexual activity with a 14-year-old girl and sexually assaulting a 15-year-old girl at a friend's house in Hertfordshire in 2022. Tens of thousands of people across England are having to be retested for type 2 diabetes after a machine used in hospital labs by 16 NHS trusts gave incorrect results. Some people have been wrongly diagnosed and prescribed unneeded medication. The NHS says the risk of clinical harm is low. The Duchess of Kent has died at the age of 92. She was the oldest member of the royal family and was married to the Duke of Kent, the late Queen's cousin. As well as her charity work, she was also a familiar figure at the Wimbledon Tennis Championships. Buckingham Palace said the King and Queen mourned her loss and remembered her fondly. Daniela Ralph looks back at her life.
Here she comes now, this most charming girl, isn't she sweet?
She was one of the first outsiders to join the British royal family in the post-war era. In June 1961, at York Minster, 28-year-old Catherine Worsley, the daughter of a Yorkshire landowner, married the Duke of Kent, first cousin to Elizabeth II. She adapted well to her new role, bringing warmth and compassion to it. The royal couple had 3 children, but another longed-for baby was stillborn. It was a period of intense emotional turmoil.
Just half a cup, Mrs. Divins.
Yes, please.
There you are.
The Duchess found solace in her charity work. She supported the lonely and the bereaved and combined royal dignity with displays of human tenderness, especially when working with children.
Our children are so happy. They give so much. The courage they give you, the migraine you had when you arrived, you just forget about very quickly.
But for many people, the Duchess is best remembered at Wimbledon, where she regularly presented the winner's trophy, famously comforting a tearful Jana Novotná, the losing finalist in 1993. A year later, the Duchess of Kent converted to Catholicism, the first member of the royal family to do so in 300 years. By now, she had largely opted out from royal duties. Instead, she found huge personal satisfaction as a qualified music teacher at state schools in London and Hull. Music had been a lifelong love.
I didn't change. You don't change just because you marry. And music was my passion when I was a child before I married, and it still is, and it's what I do from the heart.
The Duchess of Kent found fulfilment beyond the royal family. Quietly, behind the scenes, she used her very human qualities to enrich the lives of others.
The Duchess of Kent, who has died at the age of 92. It has been revealed that David Bowie had begun writing a musical about 18th century London when he died from cancer in 2016. His notes were discovered locked away in his study in New York, as Mark Savage reports.
When David Bowie died in 2016, his parting gift was Black Star, an album shaped by his cancer diagnosis and an acceptance of mortality. But these notes, discovered locked in his study, reveal he was working on another project, a musical set in 18th century London. The musical was in its earliest stages. David Bowie had yet to decide on a plot, and there were certainly no new songs. But the notes he left behind developed some major themes. They were handwritten and pinned to the wall so he could play with the musical structure, and they show he was interested in justice, figures like blind John Fielding, who was said to be able to recognise more than 3,000 criminals just by the sound of their voice. He wanted a character to be attacked by a notorious gang of aristocrats who terrorised London in 1712. He was also interested in the development of satire and the work of painter William Hogarth. And it seems he was planning to attract an adult audience. Is there life on Mars? It's a departure from the music he was known for, but maybe that shouldn't come as a surprise.
He spread the net really wide, and he kept going. He didn't rest on his laurels. He was continuously finding ways to be creative in new ways, and he was continuously curious throughout his life.
The notes for this unfinished musical have been preserved as part of the David Bowie archive, which contains more than 90,000 objects, from stage costumes to handwritten set lists. It will go on display at the V&A in East London from the 13th of September. Mark Savage, BBC News.
Well, let's go back now to our main story and the major cabinet reshuffle that is going on, or has been going on, here in Downing Street. Chris Mason is here. So we had Reset 2 at the beginning of the week for the government. Now we've got Reset 3. What is the Prime Minister going to hope to achieve from all this?
On that point, on the resetting, that's exactly what the opposition parties actually have jumped on and said. Hang on a minute, look, remember this was not the Prime Minister's intention, and there is some truth in that. This was fast forwarded in its timing and its scale by something no one had really seen coming, which was the implosion of Angela Rayner's career over that foul up over housing. What is the Prime Minister trying to do? He's conscious of the political headwinds into which he walks, the difficult first year the government has had, then this personal crisis, and seeking to take that moment to do something sufficiently big that those who don't pay vast amounts of notice to politics may notice that the government is deciding that, if you like, Act 1 and Cast 1 worked to a degree, as the Prime Minister might see it, but he thinks it needs turbocharging, and that is what this is all about. It'll be for our viewers to determine in time whether it makes any difference.
More from you later on at 10. Chris, for now, thank you very much. Let's have a look at the weather with Stav Danails.
Thanks very much, Sophie. Good evening to you. It was a pretty decent day today up and down the country. We saw quite a bit of sunshine around, just one or two showers across western areas. But the weekend is also looking pretty good. It's going to feel warmer. There should be quite a bit of sunshine around, but it will start to turn windy as we head through the weekend, with some rain arriving across western areas, particularly on Sunday. So this area of high pressure dominates the scene as we head into tonight and certainly into the start of the weekend. Our winds starting to come up from the south, but they will be light for England and Wales. So it's going to be another fairly chilly one, certainly in rural spots, close to coast, though, into the low teens. So we start off, maybe a little bit of mist and fog, England and Wales, eastern Scotland, plenty of sunshine here, a bit more cloud and some breeze for Northern Ireland and western Scotland, but the vast majority should stay dry, with the sunshine continuing, a little bit hazy at times into the afternoon, but we're up to 22 or 23 degrees. The winds will, though, be strengthening from the south. Now, into Sunday, this area of low pressure edges a bit closer to western areas. It squeezes up against the high pressure system, which is why the isobars close together. So a windy day on Sunday, plenty of sunshine through central and eastern parts. We'll start to see some showery bursts of rain pushing into the west. Some of it could be quite thundery in places, but we could be up to the mid-20s across some eastern areas on Sunday, feeling a little bit more humid as well. Further northwest, still quite warm, but you'll have the showers. Monday, we've got southwesterly winds, showers around. Some of them could be heavy and thundery across some western areas. But again, much of central and eastern parts of Scotland and England will stay dry with a good deal of sunshine around, though not quite as warm as Sunday. 22, maybe 23 degrees. But as we move through the new week, it will turn more unsettled again as low pressure takes over. Starts to feel a little bit cooler as well. That's it from me, Sophie.